Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dawie Rood, the Chief Economist of the Efficient Group.
Baie dankie vir die uitnodiging, is baie lekker om hier so te wees. My name is Dawie Rood, my full name is David Daniel Rood. The first Daniel Rood came to South Africa 10 generations ago from the Netherlands. So we've been here for 10 generations, plus my kids, that's 11 generations. After the speeches that I've listened to this morning, this is going to be a very difficult act for me to see if I can match those kinds of speeches. So where to start? I'm an economist, and the reason why I became an economist because it was the only subject I could pass. All these other subjects were far too difficult for me. And economics is basically about people, and you have to understand, if you understand people, then you understand economics in a way. And inevitably, that also means that you have to try to understand people in a way that they think. Now, let me tell you what I think about a state. I think the job of a state or a government or a country, you can give it different names if you like to. The primary function of the state, the role of a state is to look after me. That's the job of the state. To look after me, to protect me, and to protect my stuff. That's the primary function of the state. Of course, you can argue about some other things as well, but that's the job of the state. Now, I'm going to interrupt myself now because I just want to talk a little bit about the ANC and where the ANC comes from, for the benefit especially of our international guests that are here today. Now we must understand, and there are reasons for that, it's quite interesting, but I'm limited to the time that I have. There are reasons for that, but the ANC, the ideological roots of the ANC goes back to the 1900s roughly. 1970 roughly there, when the accidental revolution happened in Russia. And they are a bunch of socialists, they are a bunch of communists. They give themselves other names like developmentalists. They call one another silly names like comrades and things like that. Last time I called somebody comrade was in grade 3, I think it was. So that is the origin, that's the ideological base of the ANC. From that follow certain policies. And it makes absolute sense that the ANC are in bed today with COSATU, the biggest trade union organization in South Africa. Ideologically makes sense, and with the South African Communist Party. And the policies that flow from this ideology are policies like, for example, expropriation. And many other policies, like the NHI, National Health Insurance, for example. And even policies like BEE, Black Economic Empowerment, flows from that. So that's the second thing that the ANC stand for, certain policies that simply does not fit in a modern economy. But there are more things that the ANC stand for. Remember, if you run a centralized or centrist kind of government, you must make sure that your cronies run everything that is important, everything that moves in this economy. And you have to appoint your cronies to run those institutions. They call it cadre deployment in South Africa. Another name for cadre deployment is incompetence. Because people doing those jobs that are appointed those jobs do that because of their loyalty and not because they can do the job. Now we've got many commissions in South Africa, we investigate just about everything, and that brings me to the fourth thing that the ANC stands for, and the fourth thing that the ANC stands for is corruption. So those four things led to where South Africa is today. And the impact of the ANC on the South African economy was absolutely horrible. The things they've done at various levels cannot be calculated, the damage caused to the South African economy. On the local authority level, let me give you some numbers. The municipalities have been run into the ground operationally and financially. More than 70% of the municipalities today do get qualified audits. They're falling apart. They literally explode. They run out of water. It's a dirty mess. The majority of the ANC mostly run local authorities. The same happened to the state-owned enterprises, Eskom, for example. What happened to Transnet? What happened to the South African Post Office? It is just disappearing. It is just gone. It is just missing. This afternoon, the Minister of Finance will be delivering his budget speech. That's a highlight of the financial calendar. And it is often in a couple of things. That's my expertise. That's the kind of stuff that I analyze and I do a lot of work on. If you look at the budget of the Minister of Finance, is that the revenue of the Minister of Finance comes from a tiny number of people. The tax base in South Africa is exceptionally small, and that's the irony. The irony is that the ANC depends on a small number of individuals for the bulk of their revenue. And I've done the calculations and all these sort of things, and I can give you the numbers if you want to have some of these numbers. While on the expenditure side, where the money goes to, there are every month, out of a population of 65 million, every month there are 30 million people getting an income from the state out of a population of 65 million. Nearly 50% of these people in South Africa get a revenue from the state because those people, 30 million, depends on the state to survive quite often. Now, 2 million of them are civil servants, just by the way, which are glorified grant recipients in a way as well. But most of them, but not all of them, of course. And those 2 million civil servants get an income of equal to 17% of the economy, to GDP. Now, a couple of other things about the ANC. Let me just touch on. Remember the ideology of the ANC. I just want to touch on something called black economic empowerment. Whenever you get a socialist kind of government, it always ends with some sort of horrible kind of government. You get a dictator. It always ends like that. But typically around this dictator, there are a bunch of guys. In Russia, they call him the oligarchs. And we've got something similar in South Africa. We call it black economic empowerment. Think about that. Well, if you really want to empower your kids, how are you going to empower my kids? I can tell you what I would do to empower my kids. I will make sure they live in a safe environment. I will make sure they get good quality education. I will make sure they get food. I will make sure they live in a house where they have a father. Those are the sort of things. And only once I've given them those kind of things would I like them to inherit my business, for example. That's not how we do it in South Africa. If you see what happened to the people in South Africa, today we are poorer than 15 years ago. I've analyzed many things, compared South Africa to many other countries in the world. Countries like, for example, China is still a poor country, India, Mauritius, many other countries. And just about in all instances, those countries caught up with South Africa, and today many of them are wealthier than South Africa on a per capita basis because of a destructive ANC. I've compared South Africa in terms of, let me give you one number. 30 years ago, the South African economy was a third of the African continent. Today, it's about 12 or 13%. We collapsed this economy because of the ANC. And today, if you look, for example, at the quality of education in South Africa, it's not only bad, it's sometimes the worst in the world, despite huge amount of money that we spent on education. And who are the sufferers because of that? The majority black people. If you look at the crime statistics in South Africa, it's the most criminal place on this planet quite often. And who are the sufferers? Black people. We do not have black economic empowerment in South Africa, but we do have black crony empowerment in South Africa. I just want to make one or two comments about I'm running out of time here, but I think there's a bit of, let me be fair. There are some signs of things improving in South Africa. The governor of the South African Reserve Bank, for example, is doing an excellent, brilliant job. Last year, he forced the Minister of Finance to reduce the inflation targets, for example, which is a good thing. We saw the rand appreciating, the capital market, equity markets, and all of that. So that's a good thing. We're off the grey list. That's a good thing. But the irony, and in a way, that's good news as well. As the ANC is trying to centralize everything, they're destroying everything, it is falling apart, and it's being decentralized. And the private sector is picking up the pieces. And that is the irony. I just want to make a few comments about what's happening internationally. Now we've got many friends of Europe and of the United States here as well. And I must tell you, I think Europe's got some major problems. The European economies are overtaxed. There's too much red tape. There are too much regulation. People have stopped working in Europe. If you compare the productivity growth in Europe to the Americans, for example, the Europeans are falling further and further behind the Americans. And it is primarily because of the ideological differences between the Europeans and the Americans. Let me give you one example. One example has to do with money. I absolutely love money. for obvious reasons. But I also love money as an economist for the amazing role that money plays in the economy. And there's a new kind of money. And whenever money evolves into something else, you get this increase in economic activity. And this new kind of money is based on a new technology, and this technology is called the blockchain technology. I'm not talking about Bitcoin necessarily. I'm talking about the technology, the blockchain technology. The Europeans have decided that they're going to create their own central bank digital currency to call the digital euro. The digital euro will be based on a blockchain technology which will be programmable. That means all your transactions will be visible to whoever issues this currency. It will become a reality in 2029 for your Europeans. That means it will be impossible for you to evade 1 single cent of taxes because the authorities will know everything about your financial matters. That means in the hands of a dictator, this is a very, very powerful instrument. Contrast that to what the Americans are planning to do. The Americans, they've started issuing something that's called so-called stable coins. Now, last year, they accepted a new law in the United States. It is called the Genius Act. And the Genius Act, Donald Trump says it's named after him, but the Genius Act, basically what it does, basically what the Genius Act does, it regulates the world of stable coins, which makes it more safe and easier and more stable, I guess. I'm not going to go into the technicalities of the whole thing, but the difference is it is under control of the private sector stable coins. There are some regulations behind that, some things that you have to do in order to make sure that the stablecoin maintains its value and so on. But essentially, it is a money under control of the private sector. And what is interesting is that the stablecoin, the American US dollar stablecoins are becoming more popular. People like to use the US dollar stablecoin because the transaction costs are much, much lower. Just think what's going to happen to the credit card companies. They're going to lose a lot of business here, and the bank's going to lose a lot of business as well. This is a revolution in money. And I foresee, and it's quite possible that one day we're going to start using these kinds of money. These kinds of money that we can use internationally, we can use to pay one another, and the authorities can't see what I'm doing because it's a personal matter. I don't want the authorities to see what I'm doing. But what should be done? What can we do? I'm not a political scientist. This is like many of or sociologists, like many of my friends that had delivered their speeches earlier. But here is what I think that we have to understand. If you look at the composition of economies, you will find that economies, that the growth part of the economy, the important part of economies today, are not what is happening on the farms. It's not what's happening in the mines or in factories. It is what's happening in what is called the tertiary industries or the service industries. That's that part of the economy, that's part of the advanced part of the economy. And just about, and I promise you, most of you sitting in this hall this morning are part of the service industry. And we must understand that the service industry is part of the digital economy, and much of that happens in the clouds. And that's what we need to do. That's what I believe the solution is. Of course, if you look at South Africa, for example, we organize ourselves. We make sure we stay safe because it's a very dangerous place, South Africa. We make sure that we look after our culture and our language, and we organize ourselves in all sort of manners, which is a good thing. But there's something else we need to do as well. And we must teach our kids that they must have the necessary skills to participate in this modern economy that happens in the cloud. We must make sure that we utilize the most recent technology to be part of this modern economy. And you don't need to be anywhere. You can be anywhere as long as you have a good internet connection and a good computer. And that's why it's so important for us to get Starlink to come to South Africa. So then if we get Starlink in South Africa, the politicians can't cut off our computers or can't cut off our internet anymore. And I believe that's the answer. The next thing that we need to do, we have to get away from the politicians and the control that politicians have over us. And we do that by joining the community in the cloud. And when you do that, they cannot touch us. Thank you very much for listening to me.